Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to look at one of my favorite area control games ever made, and that is Innis. This is a 2 to 4 player game published by Tabletop Games. In Innis, you are trying to become the king, and you're going to try to do this by meeting one of 3 different win conditions and proving that you're the best leader. So let's go head down to the table. I'll give you a general overview of how the game plays, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Innis. Innis is going to be an area control game where you're going to have 3 different ways of gaining victory throughout the game. And the person who can prove that they have met the victory conditions will be the winner. So, to start off the game, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to set out 3 random locations, and then you're going to get the cards that match them. We'll go over that, why that in a second. Then, whoever the first player is going to be, whatever way you want to decide it, they'll be the Bren, and they get to set where they want the capital to be. Now, each player will take a turn and put one of their figures out, which each figure is a clan, and until everyone has 2, and then the game will start. This is going to be a typical layout of a 4-player game. And at the start of the game, normally you would check to see who controls the capital, so who has the majority in there, and that would be the Bren. If there was a tie, the person that's currently Bren would remain being Bren. However, on the first turn, whoever was Bren during setup is going to continue being Bren for the rest of that round. Now, in Innis, there's a couple things you have to understand really first. And 2 of the major components of Innis is going to be, 1, how you win, and 2, how conflicts are resolved. Everything else is pretty much offloaded into the cards that you draw. They're pretty explanatory on what you're going to do, and the cards are your actions during the game, which we'll go over in a minute. However, to win the game, there are several different ways that you can win the game. One way that you can win the game is that you have control over 6 opponents' clans, which each of these is a clan. So blue would have control over these 2. And let's say green brought in 2 more. And blue had 2 over here. Now, blue could try to win the game. They have to get the pretender token, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and at the beginning of the next round, if they still have that win condition, they could win the game. So, because there's 2 blue here and 1 orange and 1 white, blue has control over these 2 clans, and since there's 3 blue, 2 green, and 2 white, blue has control over these 4 clans, so 6 total. So that's one way of winning. The other way of winning is just to be present. You don't actually have to have control of, but just be present in regions that have where you're going to have, let's say another blue's over here. Well, actually, we'll say green one. All right. So these are sanctuaries that get put on with game events or cards on the board. And if you have presence in territories that contain 6 or more, so there's 6 total here, green could claim victory because it has a unit here, here, and here, and then there's 6 sanctuaries. So that's another way of winning. The final way that you can win is if you, now through different game events, you will be placing out new regions, and the regions will connect between 2 places. So whoever's the Bren, regardless of who's exploring with these event cards, will pick where they're going to go, and then that player will place the tile there before, and the Bren has to pick before they draw the tile, so they don't know exactly what it is. When you do this, just as a general thing, when you explore, you're going to bring out, so that's the Lost Veil. I will bring out the Lost Veil card and place it out here. And then whoever explorer can put one of their troops there. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the last win condition. So as you're exploring, you're going to put more and more of these places out. So I'll have like this place out. There'll be more and more of these cards we can use. And if you have presence, so you don't actually have to control them, we'll get one more out here. We'll place that guy. I really like how these jigsaw in. Nice and neat and tight in there. And let's say one here. So if I have units in 6 or more regions, I can claim victory. And since there's 6 regions out here, I have 6 units out there. I could try to claim victory. And we'll go over what that means now at this part when we go over the round. All right, so the way this is going to work for a round is going to be the first thing you're going to do is going to see who gets the Bren token. Now, again, if it's the first turn, if it's first round, the person who had it will keep it even if they don't have majority. But you're going to see where this capital is, and whoever has majority will get the Bren token. If there's a tie, the person who had the Bren token the last round will retain the Bren token this round. After you do that, you're going to check to see if anyone won the game. And you're going to see if anyone has these pretender tokens. A little bit later on how you get them. But if anyone has any pretender tokens, you're going to see if they meet any of those 3 win conditions. If they do, and they're the only person that does, they win the game. However, if 2 people have pretender tokens and both of them have 1 win condition and neither of them is the Bren, there is no winner. They go into the next round. However, if one of them is the Bren, that person is the tiebreaker and wins the game. Now, you can also have multiple win conditions. So if you have like 2 win conditions and someone else has 1 and you have the pretender token, you win the game at the beginning at the round at this point. So the next thing is the Bren is going to flip the flock of, if no winner, we're going to continue on, is going to flip this flock of crows token. This is going to determine the turn order for the whole round. In this case, everything's going to go to the right. So all play will go to the right, drafting will go to the right, everything will go to the right. Next round that will flip again. So then you're going to see who has control of the different regions, and whoever has different control of the different regions is going to get these cards. So whoever controls the hills, in this case no one does, so no one gets this card. Whoever controls the valley would get this card, and they put it in their hand. Now they will be able to play this on their turn, and they may want to, because at the end of the start of the next round, if someone else has control of this, they can take this card. So this one here says after you play a season card, so this one has a prerequisite of playing a season card, you can place one of your clan territories where you're not present. So that's going to allow you to move stuff around. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to shuffle up this deck of season cards, and you're going to take one out. Then you're going to deal out 4 to each players. Now, these season cards are your actual actions for the turn. These are what you can do. So on your turn, you can pick one of these and you do what it says. This is how you're going to move units around the board. This is how you're going to combat. This is how you're going to get some of these epic tale cards, which I'll go over those in a second, that are amazing. This is how you put your sanctuaries out. This is how you get your cities out. Everything you do, for the most part, is coming from these, the Epic Tales cards, or sometimes some of these territory cards. So you'll deal out these 4 cards, and what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of them that you're going to hold in your hand, and you're going to pass 3 of them in the direction of the flock of crows. The player that is downstream to you will pass up 3 cards to you. You'll take a look, and you'll pick 2. Now, I could pick these 2. I don't have to pick the one I held, and then I'll pass those 2 off. Then I'll get 2, then I'll do 3, and then I'll get my final card. And that's how drafting works in Innis, and I really like that you can change your mind and keep different cards, but you will end up with 4. You may have a couple of these cards, so your first round you might have a couple of these, you might have this, and these are what you get to do on your turn. So we're going to go over what you can do on your turn, and then we're going to go over the next most important thing to know in the game, which is going to be how to resolve conflicts. So basically what's going to happen is on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. I can play one of these or pass. Now, if I pass and everyone passes, the round ends. It's over. So you want to be a little careful, but passing can be very important because you may want to delay your actions that you're going to be taking to allow to see what other people are going to do first. But you don't want to push your luck too much, because at the end of the round, these cards go away. If you had any green cards in your hand, you lose them. You don't get to keep them. The only thing you get to keep is Epic Tale cards if you haven't played them. Now, the majority of Epic Tale cards you're going to get from these season cards. There are some of the territory cards that will give you Epic Tale cards, but you'll get them from there, and you can keep these round from round until you actually play them. But these green cards will go away. So you want to balance out when you take your turn, your timing, and what you do and which ones you use. So, for example, there's going to be two different types of season cards, or two different icons that can be on season cards. Some of them have both, like this one here. This is when you play it on your turn, you do this. This is when, if this lightning bolt thing is satisfied, you do this on another player's turn. So this one here on my turn, I could play this card, and I could draw one card, draw one epic tail card. So that's one of them from there. However, if I play this as a Triskel card, or basically a triggered card, after one of your maneuvers removes one or more opposing clans, you gain one deed. And we're going to go over deeds in a second. But I would be playing this, and the trigger for this would be, we're in combat, and one of my opponents has to remove their figure. And then I get to do that. So those are the two different types of season cards that you can run into, where they can have stuff you do on your turn and stuff that potentially you could do on other players' turns. So simply, that's it. That is how the turns run. Now we're going to skip back to combat, but we're going to keep on going. And one of the last things you can do on your turn, other than pass or play a card, is you can take one of these pretender tokens as an action. So that's your whole turn. If I take a pretender token, I have to have met one of the win conditions at the time that I took this. It doesn't mean that I do afterwards. It just means that I did when I took it. And then I'll have to tell people what I'm winning with. I don't have to tell, if I'm winning with 3, I could be like, I'm winning with this one right here, so that's why I'm taking it. You don't need multiple of these. You only need one. At the beginning of the round, next round, if I still have that win condition, I could win the game. You cannot win the game unless you have one of these pretender tokens, period. So keep that in mind. That is, I guess, the third thing you can do on your turn. Another thing I'm going to mention before we go into combat, which will be the final part of this brief overview, is these good deeds tokens. These ones here will count as one of the requirements for win conditions. So if I have this, I could use it to say that I only need to have one person in 5 regions. So right here, I could take a pretender token, because I could say I will use this to show that I have my requirement for that win condition. A couple things to note on this. You don't really lose these. The only time you do lose these is if you lose all your characters on the board. You will lose all your good deed tokens and be able to place 2 clans out immediately. And you can only use these for one of the prerequisites. So you can't use them to show that you can do 2 or more. You're going to have 2 or more of these to be able to do it. So just to keep in mind with that. So let's go ahead and go over combat, because combat is the next biggest thing in the game, and the only thing that's really has a lot of rules to it outside of just the win conditions. The cards pretty much are self-explanatory. Those two things, win conditions and combat, are the big things to go over. So in general, if someone moves into a territory and is not placed there or whatnot, for one reason or another, if there's any enemy units in that territory at all, those enemy units, including and yourself as the aggressor going in, even if you had a unit in there, have to decide if you're going to fight. If all of you decide you're not going to fight, nothing happens. You're great. Everybody's happy. You're in that territory. However, if they do decide to fight, then we are going to fight, and people are going to die, or you're going to lose actions. And let's go over, basically, you have a couple different decisions. So if you're the aggressor, you get to move first. However, everyone else, if there's any cities, so this or the capital, in the region, in turn order, not including the aggressor at any point, can put one of their characters in an open city. So if I had 2 cities, and green decided, then white gets to decide, and they'll put one in there too, and then we'll start combat. These people are immune from combat. They can't be affected. They are safe. You can't touch them. However, these people will start in combat. Now, it starts with the aggressor, and the aggressor has to decide what they're going to want to do. In the most of the time, they're going to decide to attack. The only other thing they can do is retreat, or play an Epic Tales maneuver card, which will come from these, and these are basically like a different action you can do for combat. So, what are we going to do? Well, I'm coming in here, I'm going to decide to attack. So if I attack, and there's 2 units here, I'm going to pick which color I'm attacking. that player has to do one of two things: discard this unit off the board, or discard one of their season cards. And these cards are their actions. So if they discard one of these cards, that's one less thing they can do this round. So it's very painful. You may want to keep your guy here because you're like, I'm trying to work towards a win condition that I can have, so I will discard this card. Then we'll go and say, okay, well, I discarded a card, so I still have a green unit yet. In player order, green's next, so green gets to decide whether they want to attack. Well, first, before we do that, everyone gets to decide again if they want to continue fighting. If they want to continue fighting, green gets to decide whether they want to attack, withdraw, or use an epic maneuver card. So if I want to withdraw, I have to withdraw into a territory that I have control of. So I can move here. But I couldn't move like here. Let's say they did that. Then the white player here we decide again if we're fighting. The white player says, I'm fighting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack. So now the blue player has to decide if they're going to destroy a unit or destroy a card. And blue player is like, I'm going to destroy a unit. Comes back to them. They decide to attack. White player loses the unit. Combat's over. So combat ends when there's only one player's clans left, or everyone decides they don't want to fight anymore. Then these guys will come back in, and that's it. Now, if you retreat, so this character retreated here, they withdrew, they now have to resolve over here. So this one's done. They now have to resolve whether they're fighting or not. So you can have a really cool chain reaction going and lots of units getting wiped off the board. Orange is like, heck, I'm good. Because green coming in is the aggressor. They don't want to lose a card or their unit. Green's like, I'm fine with you being there because I have control over your clan, and that is towards a win condition. So that in general is how combat works. The game itself is pretty simple game for as much depth and strategy there is in the game for the 3 different win conditions. So let's go ahead back up to the table here, and I'll go ahead and give you my final thoughts on Innis. All right, as you could already tell, I love Innis. Innis is an amazing area control game that is full of like negotiation, combat, just basically balancing your actions, drafting. Everything is just awesome in this game. It is a very tense game, and it builds. Like as you get more territories out, as people spread out, the game becomes more and more tense because the win conditions become easier and easier for each of the players. And you have to work towards mitigating their win conditions or mitigating them being able to do their win conditions and you getting your win conditions. So there's a lot of push and pull in this game. Like you might actively fall on the sword per se to take out some of your opponent's clans to prevent them from having control over 6 or more clans, which is probably about the easiest one to do in the game. Or you might just jump out into a region just to knock out one of the clans in that area to prevent them from having presence in 6 areas. So you have to watch those sanctuaries too. When you put those sanctuaries out, you don't want to put too many sanctuaries out in one region because you don't want to make it too enticing to other players. So what do? Lots and lots of things and strategies that you need to think about while you're playing this game. This is a very intense game. However, the rules themselves are pretty simple. You just really need to know what the win conditions are and understand them, and you really need to know how combat works. Everything else is pretty much offloaded onto the cards. As you go through games or rounds, you will pretty much memorize what those cards are and know what opponents can do. In general, without memorizing cards, you know they could either get an Epic Tales card to do some cool stuff, they can move units out on the board, they can cause combats, they can put sanctuaries out, they can put cities out. That's basically what those things do. So, really like how intuitive the game is and how engrossed I've become. Even with my first play, when our group was done, we just wanted to play it again. It is that good of a game. This game is a 100% in my top 10. It's actually down all the way to my either 1 or 2. It has to fight with Blood Rage a little bit, but really, really love this game. If you're into area control, area majority style games, and you like them are more on the action end with high player interaction because everyone is invested in the board state of this game, I would highly recommend picking up Innis. Thank you for watching.